All right, today we're tackling a huge topic that's really shaping our modern world: regionalization. Seriously, if you want to understand international politics today, this is a concept you've absolutely got to get your head around.
So here's the central puzzle, right? We hear all the time about globalization, about how we're living in this one big, interconnected world, and yet at the exact same time, countries are forming these tight-knit regional clubs. Think the EU, think ASEAN. It seems like a total contradiction. So what's going on here? Well, to figure this out, we need to dive into a really powerful idea about how you actually build lasting peace.
The core idea is this: you don't just wave a magic wand and get world peace. It doesn't work like that. Instead, you have to build it piece by piece. And the theory behind this is something called functionalism, which is pretty much the key to unlocking this whole regionalism puzzle. Okay, so the logic here is actually brilliant. Functionalism basically says, look, forget about trying to solve the huge, angry political disagreements right off the bat. Instead, you start small. You start with what the theory calls low politics, the technical, practical stuff where everybody wins by cooperating. The hope, the big idea, is that working together on these small things builds trust, and that trust eventually spills over into the really big, tough areas of high politics. So let's break down how this spillover actually works. The classic example, of course, is Europe after World War II. Step 1, they decided to cooperate on coal and steel. You know, the literal ingredients you need to build weapons. Super practical, not super political. Step 2, to do that, they had to build trust and create new organizations to manage it all. Step 3, and what do you know? It worked. That success spilled over, leading to a common market, and eventually a single currency, the euro. And the final step, the grand prize, you get piece by pieces, by tying your economies and countries so closely together that going to war with your neighbor just becomes, well, completely unthinkable. So that's the theory. But of course, the real world is always a bit messier. Regionalism doesn't follow just one path. Let's take a look at 3 really different ways this is played out, starting with the big one, the one that really tried to follow that functionalist recipe. And that brings us to the European Union. The EU is really the gold standard, the most ambitious regional project on the planet. I mean, it's a massive attempt to weave sovereign countries into this incredibly deep political and economic partnership. And its whole story starts with functionalism. And you can just see that step-by-step process right here. It all kicked off in 1952 with just coal and steel. That worked out, so 5 years later, bam, you get the Treaty of Rome and a much bigger common market. The huge leap forward was in 1992 with the Maastricht Treaty. That's when the European Union was officially born and the plan for the euro was set. Each step was built on the success of the last one, spilling over and over until you have this powerful union. Now, it's not all been smooth sailing, of course. I mean, we've seen things like Brexit and huge arguments about national power versus EU power. But the journey itself, it's a textbook case of functionalism in action. But here's the thing. Not every region wants to be the EU. That deep integration isn't for everyone. So let's head over to Southeast Asia to see a totally different approach, a model where every country's individual power is sacred and everything gets decided by everyone agreeing. Now, this is what's so fascinating about the ASEAN way. Just look at these principles: non-interference, mutual respect for sovereignty. That is the absolute opposite of the EU, which is all about pooling sovereignty. The ASEAN model is all about making decisions together through consensus. This came out of a history where these nations wanted to protect their hard-won independence. It's great for fostering cooperation, but that strict non-interference rule can also make it really tricky for the group to act decisively when a crisis hits one of its members. And for our third example, we've got another flavor altogether. Let's look at North America. Here, the main reason for getting together wasn't about preventing war or building a shared identity. Nope. It was pretty much all about the money, making trade easier and growing the economy. And what's cool here is you can see how even these economic deals have to change with the times. The original NAFTA in '94 was a huge deal, but by 2020, it had been replaced by the USMCA. And look at the changes. The rules for car parts got way stricter, labor and environmental protections were beefed up and put right into the main agreement, and they added this sunset clause, which basically forces everyone back to the table every 16 years to see if it's still working. This wasn't just some boring technical update. It was a direct result of huge political fights in all 3 countries over jobs and the environment. It just goes to show you, these regional deals have to evolve or they die. So, when you put all these examples together, what you're seeing is this massive shift in how world politics even works. We've moved away from a really simple, old school model to something way more tangled and interesting. Let's unpack that. For the longest time, people thought about world politics using the billiard ball model. You picture each country as a solid billiard ball. They're self contained, they crash into each other, they're all fighting for power, and what happens inside the ball is totally separate from the game on the table. But that's just not how the world works anymore. Regionalism fits way better with the cobweb model. In this view, the world is this messy, complex web of connections, not just between governments, but between companies, organizations, and regular people. The line between what's happening at home and abroad gets completely erased. And this image, well, it just captures that new reality perfectly, doesn't it? Look at all those different lines crisscrossing everywhere. It's not just a country talking to another country anymore. It's businesses, it's cultures, it's global organizations all weaving this dense fabric of what we call complex interdependence. Regional groups are both a cause and a result of this very world. This quote here from Bayliss and Steve Smith just nails it. The idea of the world as a multiplex cinema is perfect. You've got all these different movies playing at once, all in the same building, and sometimes the sound bleeds through. The old, rigid borders are becoming less important, and regionalism is a huge part of this new, overlapping, interconnected reality. Which brings us to the massive question for our future. We're facing these giant global problems, pandemics, climate change, that no one country or even one bloc can possibly fix alone. So, what is it going to be? Are these powerful regional clubs going to turn inward and become fortresses, protecting their own in a chaotic world? Or will they be the bridges we need, using their combined strength to build the global cooperation that we so desperately need? Honestly, the answer to that question is going to define world politics for decades to come.